You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Rogue. Each week we design new decks for tournament play. We put our creations to the test and share our findings on the air. Yargle and Multani is a big dumb frog with exactly one job: smack the opponent for lethal damage by any means necessary. Lawson Zandy returns to share his obsession with Windbrisk Heights and to save Cavedan from his own bad ideas. That's all coming up on Faithless Brewing. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I'm your host, Dan Schriever, joining you once again from the windy city of Hsinchu, Taiwan. And I'm joined all the way from Dallas, Texas, by Lawson Zandy. Zanman, welcome.
Howdy again.
Is that a Texas howdy? Is that the appropriate Texas drawl?
Well, I did go to school at the Texas A&M University, and at the Texas A&M University, the University of Texas, the official greeting is howdy. So, yes.
Well, great to have you back. So David is off this week. Mort is off this week again. So always happy to have you back, Lawson. Thanks for filling in. And we got a lot to talk about once again. We are kicking off brewing season for March of the Machines. We have our first card. It was Chrome Host Seed Shark. Lawson, you and I talked at great length about this in Monday's episode. So Seed Shark is the card that definitely wanted to start with that. But what often happens is, your brain just goes in different places, right? Everyone's in our Discord, throwing around different ideas, what about this? What about that? It's too much to fit it all into the Seed Shark. And we don't want to wait forever, right? We want to strike while the iron is hot. So what we want to do today is what I'm calling the Day 1, Week 1 Bad Ideas episode. These are just miscellaneous ideas that, they came up in the time between our set reviews and recording our first card. We just want to get them out of our system. Hopefully, just describing these concepts out loud will break the curse, and I'll be able to move on and work on more responsible cards for the rest of the season. So I do apologize in advance if you're not hoping to hear about Yargle and Multani for 10-15 minutes. This may not be the episode for you, but we'll start off with some more interesting stuff. So I want to start with you, Lawson, because you've been playing a lot of Magic lately with all kinds of stuff, specifically Shining Shoal, but you've branched out. And I've noticed you've been playing a lot of Windbrisk Heights.
Yes. I am going to say that I am the formal person that has played the most Windbrisk Heights in Modern over the past couple of years. Just in the past week, Windbrisk Heights, for those of y'all that don't know, your classic Modern staples from Lorwyn originally, all the way back in 2007, kind of near the beginning of the Modern format. It's a hideaway land, so when it comes into play, you get to look at the top 4 cards of your library, remove one of them from the game face down, then put the rest on the bottom in any order. It taps for 1 white mana, and then for 1 white and tap it, you may play the removed card without paying its mana cost if you attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn. So for long-time Modern old heads, this card was the most powerful thing that your opponent could play if they were Soul Sisters. And then this card saw a little bit of play in some black-white tokens themes, but those decks have not been tier 3 even in Modern since probably 2015. So it's been quite a while since the Windbrisk Heights has had its day to shine in the format. So I've been re-exploring, let's say.
Well, in the older versions of the deck, what were they doing with the Windbrisk Heights? I mean, obviously, you want to enable it by having creatures that can attack. You need to attack with 3 creatures, but what you get off the hideaway. I mean, do you account for that in your deck building? What was the payoff?
Yes, the payoffs were very different than what I've been interested in recently. The old school thoughts of these decks were basically white weenie decks, and then the things that you're hoping to play off of your Windbrisk Heights, either just a creature to come into play and trigger all of your Souls Warden effects to get you to gain a bunch of life randomly, to put some extra counters on in a Ajani Pride Mage, or Anthem effect. So Honor the Pure, or Actual Factual Glorious Anthem, or maybe even just a thing that made a few more tokens. So, Spectral Procession were all things that were kind of the boogeyman to be underneath a Windbrisk Heights.
They attacked me with 3 creatures, and then they made 3 more creatures. All right, so I assume that's not what you're doing with the Heights, but maybe I'm wrong. So what are you looking to do with the Windbrisk Heights, and perhaps more importantly, how are you enabling it?
Yes, so I am not interested in Spectral Procession, at least for my payoff. One of the things that has really shocked me about Windbrisk Heights, the reason why I ran into it recently was I did play actually an old school Martyr proc deck over this past week, and I found out that even having your Sarah's avatar, or wait, Sarah's avatar, what is the name of that 1 mana, hopefully 6/6 flyer, was not good enough.
Sarah Ascendant. Yeah, Sarah Ascendant.
Sarah's Ascendant. Yeah, I found out that card is not good enough in Modern, even if it's a 1 mana 6/6 lifelink, where you're having to jump through some hoops to activate it. There's just so many things that take you off of 30 life early game. People are ready to kill your 1 mana creatures because of Ragavan. And even if you do make it happen, you're still going to lose the game to Archon. You're still going to lose your guy to Leyline's Binding and Solitude. You went up to 30 and then you gained 6 life? That's fine. I'm going to Crashing Footfalls, then I'm going to Crashing Footfalls again. Oh, you're under 30, now your thing's a 1/1. Like, it isn't what it used to be. But after playing those Martyr decks, it was very, very easy for me to activate Windbrisk Heights. And I have been playing a lot of decks recently in Modern that are playing 4x Amaria's Call and 4x Chancellor, which are 7-drop spells that I've been playing because sometimes your Ragavans or your Fable, the Mirror Breakers, are making you some treasures, and those cards are really powerful when you do eventually get to cast them. So I wanted to explore, what if you just played this in a deck where eventually you would have some creatures in play, and you're already playing the kind of payoffs for having a card like Windbrisk Heights in your deck, incidentally. So that was kind of the inspiration, let's say.
It's kind of genius. The whole Chancellor of the Annex Ragavan thing. I mean, you started playing that at Hunter Burton. It's like the white Ragavan scam, if we can call it that. Like turn 1 Ragavan with Chancellor protection. And then immediately you cast the Chancellor on turn 4 because they can't kill the Ragavan when you do that, and it just spits out 3 treasure tokens. But then, like, finding the Windbrisk Heights, which is just a card from Modern's past. I mean, we had Cavedan 07 as a guest last week, and he was telling us how he loves to just find these old archetypes, old pieces of decks that have just fallen by the wayside, people have forgotten about them, and give them new life, right? For him, it was like the Safi Eric's Daughter combo in like a scam setup. Here, like, yeah, what's wrong with Windbrisk Heights? I think you're asking about this in the Faithless Brewing Discord, like, hey, why is no one playing the Heights? And I think no one had an answer. We all just forgot about the card.
Yeah, that is definitely something that is kind of unique to Modern. There is no format that is as welcoming to brewing that has, 15, 20 years of Magic available to it, Modern is as big as it is now as Vintage was when Modern came out. That's just the way that Magic is these days. So, there are cards that people forget about, and then there definitely is some room to explore it. When it comes to Windbrisk Heights, there are basically 2 things that I want to check off to make sure that we are doing it well. The first one, I want to make sure we've got some actual payoffs for what happens when we activate the Windbrisk Heights and did attack with some creatures. I have found that Solitude and Amaria's Call and Chancellor, having those 12 cards at kind of the top of a curve, is enough of a payoff to let you find success. If you are interested in what the odds are, if you have 12 good hits for a hideaway land, it makes it to where your success rate with it is at the very worst about 60%, 61% through a hypergeometric calculator. That might sound not good enough, but it is important to note that Windbrisk Heights does also let you play lands, so it can find another Windbrisk Heights and reset itself, and then in specific matchups or specific moments, there are plenty of times where you would be interested in a Fable the Mirrorbreaker or a Seasoned Pyromancer, or, name a card that is in your deck. So, about 80% of the time when I play a Windbrisk Heights, I'm pretty excited about the card underneath it, and I'm willing to jump through the hoops to try and cast it.
I did not realize you could play lands off that. Does that count as your land drop for the turn, or do you actually put the land in during combat? Or whenever you activate, sorry?
It does count as your land drop for turn.
It does, okay.
It does count as your land drop for turn, but it can break timing restrictions. So you can do it at the end of your turn if you randomly needed to, see if you needed to use it. So
that's fascinating. So, it seems like it's working out for you. Not on the 5-0s yet. I know that's been like a struggle. Always falling just short of getting to the 5-0s. But what have you learned about the heights so far? Do you have like core enablers that you're going to every time that you've identified as like the best ones?
So yes, I sent a message to Cavedan a couple of days ago talking about Windbrisk Heights. I looked through my Magic Online record over my last 100 matches, and I had won exactly 67 and lost 33, all playing these Windbrisk Heights variants, and have been unable to get the 5-0, which means there is something here. You are definitely walking a pretty tight rope by trying to be a grindy, beatdowny, white deck in a format where there are so many red cards. Also, you do just run into Yawgmoth decks, which are kind of a 0% matchup. And Rhino's decks can draw 4 Cascade card. Like, everyone else's nut draw is going to be probably better than most of your draws. So that is kind of the sketchy part about playing decks like this. The best enablers for Windbrisk Heights I have found, I may sound like a broken record here, but it's Ragavan. Ragavan is the best thing to turn on your Windbrisk Heights. So, first reason is Ragavan is a 1-drop creature that is incredibly powerful. He makes you additional mana on the first couple of turns, and so he can make it to where you have 3 creatures attacking on turn 3 after having played a tap land, which is incredible. The other thing that I think is pretty important to realize with Windbrisk Heights is if you go turn 1 1-drop, doesn't even have to be Ragavan, turn 2 a second 1-drop and a Windbrisk Heights, on turn 3, if you have a way to make sure that your Ragavan gets in, you can actually dash Ragavan, have your only untapped land be Windbrisk Heights, and then because Ragavan gives you a treasure token, you can now cast the thing underneath your Windbrisk Heights. So it is pretty cheeky that he can sneak in out of nowhere where your opponent didn't think you had enough creatures to attack. This is often enabled by Solitude or having Shining Shoal your opponent's creature previously, so it does happen more than you would think. Other cards that I have found that do let you do that kind of similar activate Windbrisk Heights on turn 3. Legion's Landing is a 1-mana enchantment that comes into play, makes a token, and similarly, when you attack with 3 creatures, it actually transforms into a land that can make you tokens later in the game. For Windbrisk Heights, though, it does let you have a extra mana on the turn where you've attacked with 3 creatures. So it is a perfect kind of combination to activating the Windbrisk Heights. And then I have also found, kind of funny enough, that Bowmat Courier has been really, really good in these lists. It's a pretty new addition, but since we are already a deck playing a lot of pitch effects, we sprint through our hand pretty quickly. It is also a 1-mana creature with haste, so on turn 3, it is very easy to play the Bowmat Courier, attack, and then automatically activate the Hideaway effect. You might be throwing away your Bowmat Courier, but if you know your Windbrisk Heights has a Chancellor of the Annex, you're definitely okay with that. Similarly, if it's an Amarius Call underneath there, Amarius Call will also actually give all of your attacking creatures indestructibility. So even though you might be running your guys into unprofitable blocks, you know that you can save them with the Windbrisk Heights activation. So
this is so fascinating. I'm guessing there's a subset of listeners who are actually quite tired of Ragavan because we never bought it. Like I maybe have one copy somewhere, but I've never got a playset, so I've never actually tried these Ragavan decks in paper. It's time. It's time to just buy the card. It is reprinted on the bonus sheet of this set, so the price is going to come down, and I mean, it's just amazing. Like, Lawson, you keep finding new and new things to do with this silly little monkey. So as long as it's legal, which it seems like it's going to be, you might as well pick him up now and just start enjoying these sweet lines.
Yeah, I mean, he is the best 1-drop creature I think they've ever printed, and I think that if he didn't have a 1-drop cost and you were priced into dashing him, he would be in the top 10 list of best 2-drops ever printed. So, he's pretty okay.
Pick him up off your Ranger Captain of Eos, which is so tilting to see.
Yep.
Yeah, amazing stuff. I'm sure you're going to get the 5-0 eventually. It may take another 200 matches, I'm not sure, but as long as you're at that pristine 67% win rate, I think you'll be doing fine. So, Lawson, is there anything from March of the Machine that you have your eye on for this specific Windbrisk Heights quest?
So, when it comes to trying to make the Windbrisk Heights happen, there's one card that is kind of interesting. It is the Knight Errant of Eos.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, it's a white and 4 for 4 mana, or sorry, for a 4/4 convoke creature. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you look at the top 6 cards of your library. You can put up to 2 creatures with mana value X or less, where X is the number of convoked creatures, into your hand. This card just plays really well into the I'm trying to dump my hand into play, I'm going to try to make something happen kind of strategy. And it is also just a, very, very individually powerful card. If you're already willing to play a bunch of kind of middling 1-drops, you're going to be pretty excited about this. And I've been playing a bunch of very middling 1-drops, so I'm pretty excited about playing this. I don't know if it's going to be a 4 of, but I definitely think that I will probably be playing at least 2 of it in some of my lists coming up. So be checking the Discord while I lose my mind and drop awesome screenshots.
Not the best card to put in off the Windbrisk Heights because you won't get anything off the trigger, but I mean anything else, like even just paying 3 for this, tapping 2 1/1s, you're probably going to hit at least 1 creature, maybe 2 off that. I was interested in like convoking for the full 5, and maybe that's not realistic, but I was trying to push you to put the Springjack Shepherd into the deck, which is like a white Master of Waves, but it makes goats, which crucially have a toughness, so they're 0/1s, but that means they survive after the Springjack Shepherd dies, unlike Master of Waves. I think at the time you tested it, it was just like Force of Virtue was the only payoff, but like what if you pair that with Knight Errant of Eos? I know you didn't like the card, but you did get a 4/1.
That is interesting. I will say, I did 4/1 that league. It was fine. It was kind of funny how good it played, specifically with Benelish Marshal. Benelish Marshal, white, 3/3, but Glorious Anthem effect. It into Springjack is, the Springjack is going to make 4 tokens if you don't have anything else going on. All of those tokens are 1/2s. That deck was also playing Force of Virtue, so I did have a couple of games where, turn 3, my opponent plays 2 removal spells, kills both my guys, and then I just, play some Force of Virtues, discarding some Squadron Hawks that I had laying around, played a Springjack, made, 5 2/3s out of nowhere, and that is powerful, so there is something there with Springjack. I don't want to get your hopes up too much, but it is... There is something there, I'm not super interested in exploring it a whole bunch until I solve this Windbrisk Heights thing, but we'll be back, I promise.
All right, I'm gonna hold you to that, and I look forward to the 5-0 with the Windbrisk Heights and the Springjack Shepherds and the Night Errant of Yosses. It's all gonna come together. You just gotta keep the faith.
Play some Chrome Sharks,
Exactly. There you go. Get some border posts in there to support the devotion, to trigger the Chrome Shark. Beautiful stuff. So I'm going to shift gears here. Lawson's on his Windbrisk quest. For me, myself, apart from Seed Shark, is this damn Yargle and Multani card. I just can't get it out of my head, Lawson. So I need to just talk to you about it, and hopefully you can talk me off the ledge and save me some tickets before I incinerate them on these truly terrible ideas. Yargle and Multani, legendary team up, 6 mana to cast, no keywords, no game text. it's a 6 toughness and 18 power. 18 power, this is the biggest power of any creature in the game besides Infinity Elemental, which is silver bordered. So all we need to do is just find some combination that converts that big number down there, 18, into something useful. How do you do that? Well, there's not that many options, but the few that there are, they're sort of plausible. So let me just propose a couple to you, and you tell me if you're going to bite on any of these. Would you pay, in Modern, we're in Modern now, would you pay 1 and a black at instant speed to get an 18 power haste creature? No trample, nothing going on. Because you can do this. You can get a turn 2 hit in pretty easily.
No. But I'm listening.
No, you just feel like it's not reliable without... Is because of the chump blockers, or because you think 18 is not enough, or because you just think it's too weak compared to the other options?
I am worried that 18 is not going to be enough. I feel like it's kind of similar to calibrated blasting, where even when you do the thing, sometimes your opponent's at 3 afterwards, and you're like, oh, awkward.
Well, that's what got me down this path, right? Calibrated blast keeps creeping up, right? 15 is the most you can do off that. But, 15 is not 16, 16 is not 17. Every point makes a difference. 18 is 3 points bigger than 15, right? So if you're thinking, well, I could just Goryo's and Emrakul, it's not quite that simple. That doesn't actually end the game on turn 2. That hurts them a lot. They lose a land or two, but it doesn't end the game. And then you've shuffled your graveyard away. You can't easily stash the Emrakul in the graveyard. There's all kinds of timing fussiness that happens there. So I do actually think Yargle's a meaningful upgrade in the dealing damage department, but I guess that is what I'll have to try. So that same caveat applies to the next card I will propose to you, Lawson. So would you be interested in 2 red, 5/4 creature, when it enters the battlefield, it deals 18 damage to your opponent? Would you play that card?
I would play that card.
We're talking about Cragganwick Cremator here, of course, which previously the most you could do was 16. That was with Impervious Great Worm, kind of uncastable Convoke creature. So again, we've upgraded that by 2. Fussy to set up, right? It's a random discard, so you have to make sure that there's nothing else in your hand except Yargles at that point, or other things you're happy to discard. And finally, this one is the most speculative, but would you pay 4 black-red, so 6 mana total, 4 black-red, for a sorcery that just deals 18 damage to your opponent?
No. No? Maybe. I'm listening. That one it sounds like the least amount of work.
Right, that's what's so fascinating about it. So the card in question is Morgue Burst. Draft common from what, Dragon's Maze, does that sound right?
Dragon's Maze? Yeah, that's Dragon Maze.
It takes a creature out of your graveyard, and then when it does that, you get to shoot any target for X damage, where X is the power of the creature that you brought back. You know, kind of clunky, overpriced even for limited, but what if it actually just kills someone? There's no other card that can do this. Morgue Burst is the only one that just hits face, and what's interesting to me about it is it doesn't have to be the main plan, right? Like, you just stash the Yargle in the graveyard for as long as you want. In the meantime, you probably discard your first couple Morgue Bursts to Seasoned Pyromancer, maybe you pitch it to Fury, pitch it to Grief. It's in the right colors for all of that. But eventually, you have access to this take 18 on your Curve Topper.
So, I'm going to say something, Dan, and I am going to apologize real quick to your tickets.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
Have you explored Greater Good? The enchantment Greater Good. So,
well, oh God.
Draw 18, discard 3. Discard 3 Vengevines, play all the hollowed ones you just drew, then bash with all your Vengevines. Maybe you discard a Wonder.
Oh my God.
Did I break it?
Okay, so that is the sweetest of all the things we mentioned. It does require playing Greater Good, that's 4 mana, 2 green, and then you also have to get Yargle in play. So that's 6. I mean, so the other aspect of Yargle that is kind of intriguing is that 6 is not so bad. Like, if you're ramping or if you're just playing a longer game, you might hardcast this. Probably not, but you might. And then what do you do with it? Do you fling it? Do you thud it? I think Voldaren Thrillseeker is kind of underrated card from the new set that I would put into a Yargle and Multani deck to get access to like a fling effect. I had not considered Greater Good, but I'm listening.
I would say if you were going to do Greater Good with it, you probably need to be cheating it into play. So in this kind of list, Footsteps of the Goryos or Goryo's Vengeance, either one of those would work because we're, happy to do something other than attacking with it. But
exactly. Okay, so let's look at a deck list and you can tell me how far-fetched this all seems when you see it in action. So I think that the most promising shell for any kind of Yargle thing with Cragganwick Cremator specifically, or with Goryo's Vengeance, with both of them actually, is the Underworld Cookbook Asmo package, kitchen as we would call it. Those decks will typically play 4 cookbooks, 4 Asmo, and 4 Urza's Saga. The cookbook is super important because not only does it unlock the cheesy win, right? The turn 1 cookbook, discard Yargle, turn 2 Goryos, but it allows you to just get rid of your hand whenever you want. Maybe you don't find the Cragganwick for a while, right? It takes several turns to actually get the Cragganwick into your hand. In the meantime, your hand is full of Old Chase Daredevils or whatnot. But when the time comes, you'll probably have 1 or 2 cookbooks available, and you just quickly discard everything else so that the Cragganwick is guaranteed to hit the Yargle and deal 18 to their face. Even the secondary ability of Cookbook, paying for returning a creature from your graveyard to your hand, that could also be important. Maybe you had to discard Yargle early, trying to set up a Goryo's thing, it didn't work out, and now the piece you need for the Cragganwick combo is actually in your graveyard. So Cookbook helps in that respect as well. And it's also just like a fine thing to do, so you don't want to be too all in on this stupid frog soup thing, so you have a reasonable kitchen deck as well. So that's my theory at least, and I think you could fit this into either the kind of black-red kitchen Goryo's Emrakul shell or into the slower red-green food shell. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I do like it, I think, a little bit more in this kind of more traditional Goryo's Vengeance kind of plan. I do love the fact that Cragganwick in this deck will pretty efficiently be able to discard either Yargle or Emrakul, both of which are probably good enough if you discard it. So, these decks I think are actually much better at kind of turning on this effect, just because of the power level of the cookbook. So this one I am kind of excited about. I think that Insolent Neonate and Voldaren Epicure do a really good job of doing those, 2 or 3 random points of damage that you might need to make sure that the Cragganwick is actually a lethal shot. I would want to make sure that I can get my Asmos to happen, so I might want one more Street Wraith somehow. I might want the 4th Cragganwick, but this is a kind of approach that I am kind of interested in.
Yeah, so the deck is proven. It's not as popular as Red Green Food, but this shell did win one of the Saturday challenges last weekend. So I was kind of working off that. I had to squeeze in an additional 8 cards, right? 4 Yargles and 4 Cragganwick Cremators, and I couldn't quite find the slots. I trimmed some numbers, like trimmed numbers on Epicure, trimmed a Street Wraith here, trimmed a Bone Shards. Even after all that trimming, I only got room for 3 Cragganwicks in the deck, which I think is fine. So you end up with now 4 Emrakul and 4 Yargle, so you have 8 big payoffs for cheesing in the Goryos. You're still playing Profane Tutor, so if you suspend Profane Tutor on turn 2, maybe your turn 4 win comes from, okay, Profane Tutor comes off suspend, and that's my Cragganwick turn. I'm not totally sure how it's going to play out, but this makes sense to me conceptually. I have to get it all on paper and just like try it once, and maybe I'll discover immediately that it's terrible.
I do like this approach, though.
The card that I have not included yet that I think might be important is Shadowspear. Shadowspear, normal part of a Saga package, but it's especially important with Yargle because, if the Goryos thing is going to happen later in the game, they're going to have a blocker and you're not going to get anything out of it. So you do actually need to give Yargle trample at that point, and I think Shadowspear does that for a reasonable cost, right? 2 to Goryos, 2 to equip the Shadowspear. That's only 4 mana total to attack with a 19 power trample creature.
I will say too that the list that you took this from, one of the things that these decks are always a little scared of is graveyard hate, but the Cragganwick line does give us a very, very reasonable, here's a way that we can actually win a game even if, our graveyard's been turned off. I have talked to people who have tried to play these decks and explained to me that, well, if my opponent, mulligans and hopes that Leyline of the Void is good enough, maybe they die to just kind of crappy, mediocre Asmo plus Insolent Neonate beatdown, which I have seen work before, but I definitely would not be putting everything on the line of. But this deck, hey, if your opponent mulligans deep for that, at some point we'll draw a Cragganwick, and Cragganwick might just say take 15, and that is probably good enough,
That's my hope as well. And that's in the Emrakul Goryo's kind of black-red kitchen. Curious, Lawson, what do you make of like the green-red food shell? So green-red food is going to still have cookbooks and Asmos and Sagas. That's for sure happening. But in green-red food, it's a little bit slower, right? So this is something that Aspiring Spike has worked on a lot. You'll typically see Gilded Goose, you'll see Sarenth Steelseeker, Scrapwork, Mutt, Renin 6, 4 Oval-Chase Daredevils. Sometimes they're playing Feasting Troll Kings. But the biggest addition from green is Finale of Devastation, which for just green gets you that Asmo on turn 2. So you have a lot of ways to get Asmo up and running early to get all your cookbooks online. When I took a look at this shell and thought to myself, how would I fit Cragganwick, Cremator, and Yargle in? What I arrived on was, okay, I do want 4 Yargles. I think I don't need all 4 Cremators because I do have Finale of Devastation for that. And, in theory, this would be a slower deck. So maybe just like 2 Cragganwicks and 4 Finales. And maybe I can squeeze in 3 Goryo's Vengeance here. Well, it's not as good because it won't have the ability to get Emrakuls back, but you can still kind of cheat it. You can still do the Shadowspear line with Yargle. Now you're looking at adding, a 9-card package to the deck? So you have to, something's got to go. I think Renin 6 has to go because that's not going to play well with Cragganwick Cremator. It's not going to empty your hand very well. So now we're talking about cutting Renin 6 for Yargle, which is very, very stupid, I'm sure. Maybe trim the Steelseekers, maybe trim the Scrapwork Mutts. And a card that I thought might be interesting here is the Invasion of Urgamon. It's a red-green battle that when it comes into play, rummages 1 card, discard 1, draw 1, and makes a treasure, which is not super great or anything, but that happens to provide exactly enough resources to cast Asmo immediately because you discarded and you have a mana available from that. So now between Finale on 2, Invasion of Orgamon if you've naturally drawn Asmo. I think you're very likely to get the Asmo. I'm not totally sure if Invasion is going to carry its weight. The backside is, takes 5 to flip it. But the other thing it does is it ramps you to 4, so you can just play it on 2 and then cast your Cragganwick on turn 3.
So I do like these food decks a lot. I think that, and I don't think you've played very much of these decks, but Serenworth Thrillseeker is hiddenly the most powerful card in the deck. It just lets you have so much card selection that I don't think we need to have the full 4 Yargles. If we want one to be in our graveyard for some Goryo's Vengeance tech, we can make sure they end up there. If we want to, find one to draw, we can, chew through our deck until we find one and then not put it into our graveyard. So I think that we don't need the full 4 Yargles for that. But I think that overall that if you want to have a deck that is going to get to do something with Yargle, this deck will always at some point get you there,
That's the hope. I think it would take a while. And yeah, maybe going up to 4 Serenworth Thrillseeker solves all my problems, because I don't have to worry about what to do with all the Yargles when I draw them. I do like how, again, Cookbook can bring the Yargle back to your hand if you have to. Mana hungry, and without red and 6, we don't have as much access to mana, but we still have Gilded Goose, and yeah, maybe that's good enough.
Mm-hmm. Let me real quick put you on to a card that is not in your list, but you might be very interested in. Do you know what the card Manifold Key does off the top of your head?
Yeah, it's a Voltaic Key, 1 to cast, 1 to activate to untap an artifact. And it does something else, but I can't think of what it is.
The other thing that it does is for 3 and tap, you can have target creature can't be blocked this turn. So this is an Urza Saga hit that can give your Yargle unblockability. It can also let you double activate a Cookbook. So if you already had a Cookbook in play, you could Urza Saga, get this thing out of the deck, have it function kind of like another Cookbook for, putting Daredevil into the graveyard, into the hand, into the graveyard, into the hand, doing all that. But randomly later in the game, you can just go Goyo's Vengeance, pick back up my Yargle, and then Manifold Key it to have it not be blocked.
Oh my god. That's amazing. Okay, I had no idea that it did that. All right, yeah, let's try it. Let's put that in. So 1 Shadowspear, 1 Manifold Key. I'm in.
What am I doing?
So then the other direction, right? I haven't actually sketched out the Morgue Burst scam possibility, but I think it would look a lot like Rakdos scam with just more bad cards. Maybe some persist for the Cragganwick Cremator instead of Feign Deaths, and maybe maybe Goryo's as well. I'm not totally sure about that. The third way to do Yargle is just like normal beatdown with Cragganwicks on the top. And there's a couple of ways you could do it. I have a sketch here that I'll put in the show notes. Very poorly thought out. The idea is if I have 4 Cragganwick Cremators and I just want to get that as often as possible with my Curve Topper, maybe Eldritch Evolution gets me there. So maybe it's some mana dorks. I have Birds of Paradise, I have Ignoble Hierarch here. Strangeroot Geist on 2, Voice of Resurgence on 2. These are not great, but they are fodder for Eldritch Evolution. My main target is Cragganwick Cremator. I have 4 of those, 4 Yargle that I just have to draw at some point. Or you could Eladamri's Call for it, I guess. And 2 Furies, and then a minor package of a Magus of the Moon, a Voldaren Thrillseeker for the sacrifice, an Endurance, a Bonecrusher Giant. As I look at it, it looks incoherent to me, but this is what Cragganwick Cremator decks used to be like. If you look for 5-0s in the past with Cremator and that 16/16 worm, this is what they looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think about this concept?
I do like the concept. Not to, blow your brain twice so quickly. But I think that this list might actually be the perfect deck. I want to make sure I've got the name of this card correct. Noose Constrictor. So what you can do with Noose Constrictor in this list is you can go turn 2 Noose Constrictor, and then if your opponent had shocked at any point, you can go cast Eldritch Evolution, or you can go discard all of my hand except for Yargle, and then Eldritch Evolution, Noose Constrictor into Cragganwick, and then Cragganwick Yargle.
Okay. All right. And that's better than Lotleth Troll, right? Because it gets rid of anything. It doesn't care if it's a land.
Yeah, it doesn't care what it is. It's just any card. Discard a card, give it +1/+1.
Gosh, okay. I love how you just like snap off these. I'm gonna incinerate so many tickets on this, Lawson. So I need something else, right? Like that card's not playable on its own. So is there something else to synergize? Like, do I want Vengevines? Do I want gosh, I don't know.
I mean, there is one from Modern Horizons 2 as well that is a discard a card to give it lifelink, and then if you have Threshold, it gets +1/+2, so it's a 3/3. So if you just want to be like a beatdown deck that has an Eldritch Evolution plan in it, it's called Cabal Initiate. It might be slightly better than Noose Constrictor. I mean, at this point, it's, choose your poison. But I think that having a effectively 2-card combination that says deal 18 points of damage in the form of have this 2-drop and an Eldritch Evolution is kind of interesting. Now, of course, you can get blown out by counter magic, and that would suck if you discarded 5 cards in your hand. To give your Cabal Initiate lifelink, and then it got countered. But we live by the sword, we die by the sword. It is what it is.
So shifting directions from the Cabal Initiate for just a tiny second here. I did wonder if this evolution shell is actually leading me down the wrong path. Maybe it's just stronger to say, okay, forget Eldritch Evolution, forget Stranglerootgeist. I'm going to be better off if I think of the deck as red-green Ponza, Arbor Elf, Utopia Sprawl, maybe Ragavan. That's my 1-drops. 3-drop, I want Blood Moons, I want Fables, I want Seasoned Pyromancer. And when you have that core, you just top it off with something, and maybe Cragganwick Cremator plus Yargle is that something, where if you happen to draw them both, you do the thing. But if you don't, this shell is going to get to 6 in a timely way, so you can just cast the Yargle if you want to. Does that seem like a stronger shell, even though it's going to combo less frequently?
I will say that after playing Ponza decks over the past probably 5 years in Modern, it is kind of funny how incredibly bad your win conditions can be from time to time. The secret of early game interaction into any amount of disruption into creature with power and toughness will just end the game a decent percentage of the time. So I do think that Cragganwick does meet the standard of card with power and toughness. I don't love the idea of having a combo in the Ponza deck. I mean, I guess Fable and Seasoned Pyromancer both let you discard it if it doesn't matter at the point in time, so that is a real benefit. But I've never explored a 2-card combination in those kind of decks before.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds bad to call it a 2-card combo because you have no card selection whatsoever. The only reason I would consider it is because both halves of the combo are functional creatures. They're not great, but who knows? Maybe casting Yargle on turn 4 or 5, maybe that just wins. It probably doesn't, but they do have to stop it. It is just going to kill them in 1 hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hard casting Yargle, I'm not sure where that will lead me. I love the idea of Voldaren Thrillseeker, or even just Thud or something to just kill them that way. Have all these backup ways to make the Yargle useful, but that's getting into a lot of mana, and I'm not sure if that's a fail state or something we should actually actively incorporate into the game plan.
Yeah, I think that Yargle's best thing to do is not have him ever end up in play. I think that, or at least I never want to spend 6 mana. If he ends up in play some other way, I'm now a little more interested in the fact that 18 power has fallen into play. But if I'm ever, casting this thing for 6 mana and then saying go, that is a nightmare to me.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on this. You give me ample fair warning not to do this, so I'm considering the tickets at my own risk. Yeah, Yargle and Multani. I don't know why. I just got this frog on the brain. But Lawson, any other thoughts as we head into the first week of testing? How are you feeling about the set?
I am wildly excited about this set. I mean, something awful has happened when, as an old school Magic player like myself, there is hope for Tarmogoyf, and battles have given me that hope for modern power toughness matters Magic. I will report back in the Discord plenty with, battles that have defense counters left on them. With a opponent has won the game thing up. But I will also be posting the times where I have 4 and maybe 5 flipped battles on my side. So I will, I'll do the science for everyone else. I'll have the fun for everyone.
You win battles, you get respect, just like Eminem. Excited to see what you do with all this. If you end up streaming that, I will definitely check it out. You can often find Lawson in the Faithless Brewing Discord streaming these Windbrisk brews. The 5-0 is coming. It's definitely coming. Keep the faith.
What's the saying about the rain dance? If you just keep dancing till the rain comes, it will have worked.
Is that the saying? I don't know.
I don't know. It's in one of the whiteboards here at our house. We've got a motivational quote from a comedian talking about the rain dance, and it is always a dumb quote to me, but if I keep dancing, eventually it will rain. So that's
all right, well, I'm excited to try all this out. I'll be trying the Seed Shark. I'll probably be trying Yargle as well, to be perfectly honest, and we'll report back on how all of that went in next week's show. So Lawson, thanks again for joining, and we will see you next time.
Have a good one.
Deck lists for this episode can be found at our homepage, faithlessbrewing.com. And tune in next time for new brews with Rona, Herald of Invasion, plus testing results from Shark Week. Support for this podcast is provided by brewers like you. Join the Faithless family and help support the show at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing for Discord access, bonus content, and more. That's all for today. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
I had one last thing that I wanted to bring up about Windbrisk Heights, and it's just a really interesting rules interaction, and I'm going to tell you the story of how I learned this rules interaction. This story does include me actually going to the long-form Magic rulebooks to actually find the exact writing on this, so you will enjoy this. But Windbrisk Heights, just to, fully read the card one more time. Or at least the important section. White and tap, you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if you attacked with 3 or more creatures this turn. Now, this is actually an effect that you can activate at any point. Whether you have attacked this turn, you have not attacked this turn, if you have attacked with enough creatures, if you have attacked with not quite enough creatures yet. Which is a little clunky, but just a thing to keep in mind. Just because it, has an option, doesn't mean you should activate it. Also, if you do activate it and have met the requirements of having attacked with 3 creatures during the turn, you don't have to play the card underneath Windbrisk Heights. I can't imagine a situation in which you activate the Windbrisk Heights and then your opponent does something and then you decide you would not like to, but that is an option that you always have. And Magic Online's interface for Windbrisk Heights is not fantastic. When you activate the ability, when your opponent doesn't have any responses to it, it asks you if you would like to play the card underneath Windbrisk Heights, and if you click OK, what you have told Magic Online is, no, I would not like to cast it. So you actually have to click on the card that is underneath the Windbrisk Heights on the battlefield to cast the spell. And so here's the situation I found myself in. I have 2 creatures in play, and one of them is an Adeline. So I attack with my 2 creatures. I have an Amaria's Call underneath, and my opponent blocks my 1/1 token, and they block the other creature that was attacking with the Adeline. And I activate my Windbrisk Heights. I'm going to cast the Amaria's Call, but I think I just double-clicked through it. And so we lose our token, we lose our creature, frustrating, but Moto fails and player fails are, one and the same oftentimes. It's fine. I've got an Esper Sentinel in my hand. I go ahead and play my Esper Sentinel, and I pass the turn back to my opponent. They do a whole lot of nothing. They pass back to me, and I am getting my Emeria's Call this time. So, I attack with the Esper Sentinel. I attack with the Adeline. I get my token, and I activate the Windbrisk Heights. It is at this moment that when I activate the Windbrisk Heights, so that I can cast my Emeria's Call, so that I can save my Esper Sentinel and this other token that is about to die, it again does not give me the pop-up to actually let me cast the Emeria's Call. And so I'm thinking that there is one of two things. Either there is a bug on Magic Online that is not counting the fact that I have 3 creatures that are attacking, or that there is a really, really awkward rules interaction. Much to my surprise, Moto was working perfectly fine, actually, and there actually is a rules interaction here. For a creature to be considered attacked, it needs to declare an attack. I know that sounds very simple and straightforward, but a creature being an attacker at the end of combat does not mean it had attacked. It just means it was an attacker. The notes on it, as given by Wizards, states that at the time the ability resolves, you'll get to play the card if you declared 3 different creatures as attackers at any point in a turn. Now, one creature can't be declared as an attacker multiple times if there were multiple combat phases. And it actually does reference the fact that there are many cards that will put tokens into play tapped and attacking, and those will not have count. And that seemed really strange to me. So I actually went and looked up in the comprehensive rules why that is. What I learned was for a creature to be considered having attacked, it needed to be on the battlefield at one point and not be attacking. It is not enough for a creature to be in the combat step, be an attacker, no longer be in the combat step. It needed to at one point have been on the battlefield and not been attacking. So that is your fun little rules interaction to enjoy.